Hello and welcome to another episode of the Pit Village podcast. We've got with us today Peter Watkins from Blue Penguin Accountancy. He's going to join us. We're going to speak about how he got started in business, some of the challenges that he faced branding himself, and of course, how you can start your own company if you're an accountant out there or you've got a trade, and perhaps if you're looking to work with accountants, how you can sell to them and some of the challenges that Peter's facing at the moment and how you can perhaps get in touch with him. So thanks a lot for your time, Peter.
Thank you.
No problem, matey. Well, thanks once again for coming on. I mean, well, we'll start then, mate. Do you want to talk about accountancy a little bit? And I suppose give us an overview of your younger self and how you got into accountancy, I guess.
Sure. So originally, I actually trained as an optician, and I worked as an optician in the Southwest. My family had been in optics for about 100 years, but so it was the sort of natural business. But I felt that industry was just becoming more like a shop and less like a profession, really. You know, with I won't name them on here, but you know, the big brands coming in and just a race to the bottom. So at the same time as I was working in optics, I ran a little business on the side selling spectacle parts, and I loved doing that. And I loved doing the accounting for it, and the VAT and the payroll and all that sort of thing. So I thought I would just take the leap and retrain to be a chartered accountant.
Right. And so you always had that entrepreneurial side to you then? You'd already started a business. How old were you at this point?
I would have been, I suppose, probably mid-20s at that point.
Yeah. So you've gone back to retrain as accountant in your mid-20s. How long did that take, mate? Was that intense or?
It wasn't too bad, actually. So you do it through an accountancy firm and they pay for the training, which is great. So you don't end up with any debt at the end of it. And it's a 3-year course, and you work in the practice as well as going on residential courses. And then you come out at the end of it, and then you've got the chartered accountancy qualification, and then you can go and do whatever you like, really.
Yeah. What? So is that while you're working for somebody, they will pay for it, or is that how you did it? Kind of like an internship, or is that what
Yeah.
you're
So instead of going sort of to university and doing it for a number of years, and obviously with all the sort of all the costs and everything involves, you do it on the job as almost as an apprentice at a firm who provides that training. So it's really quite good, actually, because it means it's fairly it's an easy industry to get into if it's what you want to do. You don't have to have a whole load of money or spend 5 years at university or anything like that, which is good.
No, yeah, I like that. So obviously you've opened a little business as your family's in the opticians. You felt, right, this is not going anywhere. Let me get into the accountancy. I kind of enjoy this. I mean, so where does it transition? Did you open your own accountancy straight from the bat, or did you kind of go into work for somebody and work at a firm for a bit first?
So once I qualified, I stayed with that firm for a little bit, and that was great. But then we got to a point where we had some sort of tragedy in the family. A couple of people died too young. It made me wake up to things and realize that actually I was going to carry on working in that office until I retired, and that was going to be my entire life. So I thought, no, I quit the job, and I went to set up my own practice just to try and have a better balance on life, shall we say.
Okay, no, I appreciate that, mate. So it's a personal tragedy that sort of brought this on and made you take the leap. I like that. Well, I don't like that, but I can appreciate that. So as you're moving into accountancy then, mate, and you're opening your own firm, what year is this? What is this? Blue Penguin? Straight into Blue Penguin?
Yeah. So it would have been probably 5 years ago now, off the top of my head.
Right. No worries. So you get started. You name it Blue Penguin. What's the first thing that you do, mate?
Try and find some clients. As I think with any business, I mean, to be fair, you hear a lot of people who sort of jack it all in and then start from nothing and have to go out and build that from scratch. And to be fair, it wasn't quite like that for us, because luckily I managed to get a contract with a client in the Southwest here. It was quite a large client, me doing some work for them, and that was about 3 days a week. And so kind of that gave me the springboard to then go and find other clients, So it wasn't a sort of start from zero on day one, which was quite good. we did have a springboard, which was just, I suppose, luck, really.
Yeah.
I
So
know
you
a lot of
found
people
this
have
one
to.
client, and then you built the business around that.
Yeah, that's it. And the work for that client, I mean, I enjoyed working for them, but it was a very big client, and it wasn't the sort of accounting I wanted to do. But it paid the bills and it was flexible. So, I think with any small business, you take what you can get to start with.
Of course. So you start with this one customer, and then how do you think about sort of branding the website, and where's the challenges of that?
So yeah, I mean, with that particular client, as it happened, that was a personal recommendation to someone there. So actually, I didn't really have a brand or anything at the time. But then, obviously, to go and get those new clients, then having a brand is obviously really really important. And branding is something I'm really interested in anyway, which is probably odd for an accountant, because most accountancy websites and branding is awful, and it's all the same. I think it's very easy to spend a lot of money and just look like your competitors, and just do what they do. I always knew I didn't want to have my name above the door. Like a lot of firms will be, Pete Watkins and Co. Because partly I think it's a bit old fashioned, but also if I took on a business partner, so Carl, if you were working in my business and it was called Pete Watkins and Co., people would always assume that for some reason you were not as good as me, which is ridiculous. So I thought, no, we'll just have something that means absolutely nothing about the person that runs it. So the name Blue Penguin was inspired by my wife. My wife loves penguins.
Right.
My wife's also very short, and the blue penguin is the smallest penguin in the world.
I like it.
So it's a bit of a silly story, but it's really interesting because people often ask me, where did you get that name? What did it come from? And actually, the answer doesn't matter, but the fact you've started a conversation with someone and that you're obviously standing out at networking events and that sort of thing.
Definitely.
And I'm sure I've had conversations with people that wouldn't have happened if I'd have been Pete Watkins and Co.
No, I like that. And you're already thinking here with a business, sort of long term. I like how you're thinking, look, it's not Peter Watkins and Co. I am wanting to create you said it there, when my staff members come in, I want them to feel as good as I am. So are you already thinking about, right, I want to grow this and hire staff and scale this? Or how are you thinking in that regard, mate? Coming from an accountancy to now I'm a business owner. Let me think about the longer term vision, I guess. How did you drive yourself in the beginning when there was just that one customer and you were like finding your feet, I guess? Where were your head in terms of the long term goal?
So I knew that my first client, I knew that was always going to be a springboard, and I knew that wasn't going to be long term, because that client was actually growing very quickly and they really needed someone. They needed someone full time. And the standard model in accountancy, it seems, is that you have your partners, and then you have this whole hierarchy of managers and juniors and trainees and so on and so on. And basically what it means is every year, you as a client, you're kind of dealing with a new person every year as people get promoted and change. And actually, it just seems that when I speak to other accountants who've gone down that route, it's a good way to make money, is employ people who are apprentices. They're really, really cheap. They don't last very long. And then I think it's very hard to give the client a great service, because every year they're almost speaking to someone different, and actually the partners are basically just managing the staff rather than doing the work. So the plan we have got, I didn't want to grow for the sake of growth, because I think that's something that a lot of businesses will do just because they want to have the turnover and they want to have the clients.
Yeah, definitely.
But actually it comes with it a whole load of other hassle. And then there's a point where actually I might be no better off than I was working in the big office. So the idea that we've got here, and we are only very small, there's 3 of us at the moment, is effectively a profit share system. So where I've got a guy who does a lot of our tax returns, and he's been doing tax returns for longer than I've been doing them. He is better than me, let's be fair. And he looks after a certain number of my clients, and him and I share the profit
Revenue
from those clients.
Right.
So although he is not technically a partner, I might have one day, actually on a day-to-day basis he is, because it's he has got exactly the same interest I have, which is how can we make these clients as happy as possible and stay as
Of
long as
course.
possible
He's
without
got a
him
shared
worrying about.
interest in the business with yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not paying him per hour, which I think is a bit of an archaic system, because actually, like you wouldn't want to pay your accountant per hour because, well, actually, I don't want an hour of your time.
Yeah.
I want
I want your
the
skill.
output from it. So I want to build this business in a way that we don't really have a hierarchy of staff. We just have different people who are qualified in different things, responsible for different parts of the business. And I think if everyone is then working to the same goal and has got the same interest, that should give a much better outcome for everybody, rather than, you've got a big firm where you've got people and actually their main interest is their own salary or getting promoted or jumping ship or whatever.
Yeah. It's all dog eat dog corporate sort of.
Yeah. I mean, I can't find anyone else doing what I'm trying to do, which either means it's a fantastic new idea that no one's come up with, or it's a really, really bad idea and there's a reason that it doesn't work. And Carl, I suspect we'll find out in a few years, but hopefully we're onto something.
Yeah, of course, mate. So, I mean, you talk about the next few years. I'll come on to that in a bit, I guess. We'll talk about the sort of future in a bit. So, we're talking about branding and marketing the business, mate. And obviously, you're speaking a lot here about the culture of the company and all that stuff, which is, to me, I mean, where does that come from, Peter? You said your family, were they in business, or what, did they run their own company? Because you're already thinking here very long term. You're thinking about creating a culture and doing things different, and sort of, I can see that you branded yourself around that, I guess. So where's that come from, mate?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's a family sort of trait necessarily. I wouldn't describe my family as sort of particularly sort of creative or marketing or any of that. Just sort of, they're certainly business people, but I think I'm trying to rebel probably a little bit against that sort of stuffy office corporate type thing. And I think there's this idea, Carl, in business these days that you can't be friendly and professional, and that somehow those are two different things. And I don't agree with that myself. When we were writing letters in the firm that I worked for, and there was this sort of house style of how you should write and where your commas would go and words you should use. And oh my goodness me, that's dull as anything. So we try and make it fun. So for example, instead of sending a client a letter with their tax return with all the really boring details, what we do is we'll send them a video of me recording my computer screen while I'm going through their tax return, just pointing out different bits.
Which is that personal service.
And then they can see that actually it's me actually doing it. It's not some sort of some trainee that I've got to write the letter and I've just signed it. And we just try and take it all not too seriously, because I think actually it's easy to stand out in this business if we're just doing something a bit different. Obviously every profession, it's going to be a different thing that makes you stand out. But if we just say, oh, we're accountants and we're qualified at this and we do tax returns and we do payroll, well, so does everybody else.
Definitely.
What we want to say is that, we have a barbecue every year for our clients. And it's not gone on last year and it won't happen this year, but happen again hopefully next year. And we invite everybody down, anybody who wants to come. We get a hog roast and what have you. And one of the things I do when I'm talking to a new client is I think to myself, would I want to invite this person to my barbecue? Right. And usually I think, that would be great. But sometimes I don't think me and this person would get on. And because I wouldn't invite them from barbecue, I wouldn't take them on as a client. But I think if you're running a big firm, Carl, and you've got loads of growth targets, actually, if anyone's got a wallet and a tax return, you'll take them on.
Of course. Because at the end of the day, it's not your responsibility, is it? It's not your responsibility to not take him on, is it? Because you're not at the helm of it. You haven't got to deal with like you say, you can leave, can't you, after the first year? They're being there and go and get a new job and jump ship. So you're just constantly trying to hit them targets. So I like that. You say if you wouldn't invite them to your barbecue, you wouldn't bring them on as a customer. So what do you say to that person, mate? If he comes to you, they need the taxes and you don't particularly think that you get on with him, how do you phrase that? What do you say to them?
It's always an awkward one, Carl, because you never want to tell someone that there's something wrong with them, because actually that's not the case. It's just I'm not a fit for them. They might not be a fit for us. Truth be told, we'll tend to wuss it out, Carl, and we'll say either that we aren't taking on clients at the moment, which is partly true actually, because there are certain times of the year where we don't take on clients because we're quite busy. Or we say, look, because of your particular business, so there are some sectors, Carl, where the sort of people who work in that industry just doesn't work with us, and we've been there and done that. If they work in one of those particular sectors, we'll say to them, look, we are not the best people to look after your business, but I will find you someone who will. So I would never say to someone, sorry, not interested. We'll still have a conversation with them. We'll have a Zoom call or whatever. And if I can't help them, I don't think we're going to be a good fit. We've got quite a network of other accountants who specialize in different things. I would always try and find them someone who will be a good fit, because there's no such thing as a bad client or a bad accountant. I think it's a bit like, I suppose, your mates down the pub. There are people you wouldn't take to the pub.
Definitely.
But it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them or there's anything wrong with you. But I think if you are going to have a proper relationship with a client rather than just a letter every year, you've got to enjoy seeing their number pop up on the phone and thinking, great, that person's ringing me, rather than, oh goodness, not speaking to him again.
100%.
And I think, you surround yourself with people that you like dealing with, and then work becomes less of a chore.
Yeah, or you just sat there resentful and thinking, oh my God, why have I run my own business? I've got to work with these people that I don't necessarily, So I like that. Very professional. You would always direct them elsewhere and say, look, I can maybe talk to this guy because, we might not be the best fit. Or, like you say, wuss it out a little bit and just say, we're not taking on anyone at the moment. So you get your first customer, mate. Let's go back to that. And then what about the second and the third and eventually the 10th? How does it grow? Let's say within the first 12 months, where do things go?
So it's a great question. The first clients that we had, and I imagine this is going to be similar to a lot of other businesses, is going to be word of mouth, because you haven't really got a brand big enough. Advertising takes a while, marketing takes a while, so it's you contacting all the people you already know, and hopefully them putting you in touch with people who might need some work and what have you. Some of it is chance, Carl. One of our biggest clients, which we took on probably within the first 6 months, I just happened to be standing next to the guy at a queue for a buffet at a wedding or something like that. I can't remember, some function.
Nice.
And we were just chatting, and he was moaning about his accountant. It just went from there. I'd never met him before in my life, but we both knew the host, so there was a sort of connection.
Yeah.
And so those things are just purely by chance. But it was people who we already knew or had a contact with, or a relative would say, oh, my friend needs an accountant, or what have you. So I don't think it was anything to do with marketing. That was all just people we already knew.
So just using your base.
So maybe after a year, something like that, you're going to networking events, you're being more active on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and so on. And I think it takes that amount of time before people start contacting you.
Yeah. Through the marketing efforts that you've been doing through that year. No, I like that. So you talk about networking events, mate. Is that where you sort of got the first couple of customers that may not have been referrals, or where did they come from?
Yeah, so classic thing with accountants, isn't it, is that we're all quite introverts and we're all a little bit autistic probably. And actually going to networking events is a horrible event for everybody, as some of them are better than others. But we feel we have to go to them. And, I did do that, and we certainly did get some clients, and some good clients from that, which was super. Depending on the profession that you're in, Carl, certainly for sort of online services and web design and what have you, probably networking is, I guess, less important. But with accountancy, I think people often, even though it is all online, still more often than not, I find that they like the idea of someone local, even if they're not physically meeting them. So networking was very good.
Yeah.
But what I did find is, after a while, actually you're seeing the same people, and maybe I was not going to the right networking things or whatever. But actually, what I have found, certainly in the last couple of years, and I'm sure COVID has had a massive effect on this, is that actually we're getting some really good people contacting us online from LinkedIn and from Facebook, and sometimes through the website. But there's a really interesting difference here that I want to make, is that we try online advertising, and we try Google ads and that sort of thing, we try everything to see, don't you?
Yeah.
And we got a lot of traction from Google ads. Google is obviously very good. If you pay them money, they will find people who want what you're offering. The issue is, what we found is it was people who were price shopping, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that if anyone comes to you because they're price shopping, what will happen is you can't always be the cheapest forever. There'll always be someone cheaper next year. So that's not going to be a long-term relationship.
Definitely.
So
I think we met as I were price shopping.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's, like I said, there's nothing wrong with that. If you want a product, can you just complete my tax return and don't talk to me for 12 months? And that's great. And there are clients who want that service, and that's fine. But for us, we like the idea of someone that we're sort of talking to throughout the year and what have you. So although the sort of paper advertising, it worked, but it wasn't the clients we were looking for.
Yeah.
But that's not Google's fault. That's just probably, I don't know, we weren't good enough at targeting the people. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But we're quite active on LinkedIn and Facebook, and I find that is actually a really good source of people that I like speaking to, who are like me. And I think it's because when you do an advert for any business, Carl, it's the brand of the advert, and that's great, and people make a decision based on that. But on LinkedIn and Facebook, you're interacting as yourself.
Yeah.
And obviously you're doing the same as Carl rather than Prospect 27. And so people can start to almost build like a bit of a rapport with you, even without speaking to you.
Definitely.
And they can start to think, oh, actually, I think this chap is a bit like me. And what that means then is that you tend to only get contacted by people who already kind of know what you're about, and those are the people you're likely to get on better with.
Right. So you're on LinkedIn.
Because they might.
Is this where you're getting a lot of work from at the moment, LinkedIn?
Yeah, absolutely.
And is it
we're quite active on there?
When you say you're active on there, then, mate, what can people take from that? Where are you? Are you sort of just commenting on people's things? Are you putting up posts? Are you in groups? I mean, are you branded on as Blue Penguin as well as yourself? And what is it about LinkedIn that you think makes it that? You said that people are coming to you, so like, how many leads do you get on there? Do you want to just explore that a little bit?
Yeah, so there's a really good question there about whether you should be as your business or personal on there. And the general consensus, I think, from most people is post as yourself rather than your business. We do have a Blue Penguin business page, only because I set it up so I could say I work there.
Yeah.
But actually, what you're trying to do is you're trying to build relationships with people, and you can't do that if you're commenting as your business, because I don't think that's personal enough. So I'll always comment as me and post as me. I probably do one post a day, and I'll look at other people's posts and comment on those. And I'm probably investing half an hour a day on LinkedIn, which actually is quite a lot. And although it doesn't cost anything, there is a time element to it. So it's 100%. It needs to be thought about. It's also something you can't dip into. I know a lot of people will do it for a month and get no leads from it and think, well, that was a waste of time.
Yeah.
And it took us a year really before people start to get to know you,
to notice who you are,
and see you. Yeah. So it is very much a long game. In terms of the leads we get, inevitably it's one of those things that comes up and down. I would say we probably get 2 inquiries a month from LinkedIn. Not all of those will necessarily turn into clients. But as a practice, Carl, we think that we can take on 2 clients a month as a maximum anyway.
Right.
Because I said to you before, we don't have the targets
capacity
to hit and what have you.
Yeah.
If I took on 10 people in a month, taking on a new client it's not like having a new baby. That's a bit unfair, but there's a lot to be done and a lot to be really careful with to not mess it up.
Definitely.
And if you take on 10 people, it's just a factory of
because you've got your current customers to service, and then you've got all these new customers to set up. you're throwing yourself on the boat for a month, aren't you? If you take too many people, you're nurturing too many relationships, too many
It's
files.
different for each business, because if you're a business that could take on 100 new customers a month, then that's great. You might have to then start potentially paying someone to sort of manage your LinkedIn page, start paying for the premium LinkedIn and that sort of thing. And I know there are accountants who do that, and that works very well for them, but they might have 10 or 20 staff. And that's easy. But I genuinely believe that the online networking is very powerful, but it's very hard to measure, because you'll ask someone, how did you find out about me? Or, what made you, when anyone books with us, Carl, there's a thing they have to answer, a little questionnaire. And one of them is, how did they find out about us?
Yeah.
Now, they might have found us on LinkedIn, but also they might have found us elsewhere, but also been connected to us in LinkedIn and also seen an advert somewhere else. So
definitely,
it's that classic thing with marketing. You don't know. It's never one thing often.
Yeah. So you've got your brand online, and you're sort of bringing people in, mate. You're acquiring customers on LinkedIn. I like that. I mean, where does it go from there then, mate? You've got your first couple of customers. You're on LinkedIn. I mean, where does it go year from year? So you've got your first year sorted out. When do you take on your first member of staff? And where does it sort of go after the first 12 months?
So probably I spent probably the first 2 years was just me.
Yeah.
That's fine. And then you do get to a point where you are working quite hard. There is a problem in that, as you're a very small person, you cannot be taking on another full-time accountant, because that's going to be £40,000 plus of salary.
Of course.
Is, well, hang on a minute. I might have more than enough work for me, but I haven't got work for two people. And then you could get into a trap of taking on loads and loads of work just because you've got to pay that salary. So luckily I found a lady who worked locally who's a qualified bookkeeper. She runs her own bookkeeping and payroll firm. And we took her on part-time to do our bookkeeping and payroll and a few other bits. So that was really good, because she had her other business. She was able to commit, a day a week to me, which was what we needed. So it allowed us to sort of just grow very slowly without having that big jump of taking on a member of staff properly.
Yeah.
And I think,
so you can outsource a little bits of work, the administrative stuff, the small things that you don't need to be dealing with, and then you can focus on your customers' needs and sort of maintaining those relationships, nurturing those, and maybe growing the business rather than, the admin and the small things.
Yeah, and I think in every business there's a point where that's going to help. And you see business owners, and I've spoken to other people who are busy but they don't want to pay for an assistant, because I wonder if some of it is cost. And yes, there is a cost there, but you should be able to earn more than that person's costing you in that time that you've saved.
Yeah.
But I do find other people who feel almost like it's a failure. I have one particular client who is, although she's competent at bookkeeping in her own business, she doesn't have the time for it. And everything is always left to the last minute. And, I've said, look, we can do the bookkeeping for you, or, you could get someone in to help you with the bookkeeping. It's a big enough business to warrant that. But I think she feels that it's almost some sort of failure to say that I want someone to help me with that.
Responsibility for this. It's a control thing as well, isn't it, I think?
I think you're probably right there. There's going to be some issue of it's your baby, isn't it? It's your business, and how could anyone possibly do it better than you? And I thought that at the start that who could do payroll better than me, because it's my business and I must know more than anybody else in the world, Carl, about it. But it turns out that wasn't correct, because the lady that helps us out is actually a lot better at payroll than I am.
And has she been with you since then, or how have you sort of retained her?
She still works for us today. And she's probably doing 2 days a week now as we grow a bit. And they'll get a point where we grow to a point where we could have someone full-time doing that. And again, like with the guy who's doing our tax returns, we'd look to find someone to say, look, do you want to come in as effectively, you manage these as yourself, we share the income from those clients and do it properly.
He's sort of self-employed. Yeah, so you're outsourcing those bits of work, and that's how you're growing the business, essentially, from just being yourself. I'm an accountant, I'm self-employed, to maybe be in a business that's a little bit more scalable. I can bring somebody on, make money on the back of the work that he's doing, essentially, and that's through creating this brand, Blue Penguin. So you say that you're sort of, you're growing the business, you're taking people on, and like you say, it is a control thing. It's like I've also put a job advert out there, Peter, just to say I've had like 300 applicants. So it's one of those as well. How did you find somebody that you could trust? Because it's a trust issue, isn't it? At the end of the day, I'm going to bring somebody into my business. Like you say, it's my little baby. And if you've got 300 applicants, people that you don't know, you've got to sort through them and recruit somebody out of that. Like, how do you choose? And, how did you, was it somebody that you knew already, or?
Well, do you know, it's funny actually. You're talking about you've had a load of applicants and things. We didn't advertise for the job. A little bit like one of my first clients who I just happened to be chatting to at a wedding. The lady that does the bookkeeping payroll for us, actually, I've been talking with clients, because I'm quite open with my clients about the business that we have here.
Yeah.
And I've been saying that we need to get someone in to help us with this, and just purely by coincidence, the clients actually, well, I know this lady who is a qualified bookkeeper, and I know she's looking for some work and what have you. So we had a chat with her, and we went for lunch, and we got on. I don't really agree necessarily with the sort of whole interview process, Carl, of like structured questions and things.
Yeah.
She's a qualified bookkeeper, so I knew that in theory the quality of the work was there, and we got on. And they say, I don't know who the quote is from, Carl, but I heard someone say, the only way to find out if you can trust someone is to trust someone.
Right, I like that. And you just got to have faith.
And see what happens. That's the only way. And it's worked very well, but we did it quite slowly. We were sort of a little bit of work one month, and then a little bit more and more and more, and we were very hands-on to start with. And actually now she knows that the majority of the stuff she deals with herself, and then if there's anything a bit confusing, then we'll chat it through. But I'm trying to be more hands off, so that I get more time to do the fun stuff, if you can call accountancy that.
No, yeah, I like that, mate. So you've just said that it sort of took you a couple of years to get started, essentially, and you went into this full time. What were some of the little, I suppose, personal sacrifices you had to make there then, mate? Right, just a lot of time. And how did you get by? While I know you said you landed the first big client, did they literally just pay you a little wage to pay the bills, or like how did you get through the first couple of years? Because that's a big struggle for many, I think.
Yeah, it is a big struggle, and I think if you're made redundant and you get a redundancy payout, we have clients who have set up their business using their redundancy money, which is great. But yeah, to jack it all in to start at nothing is really tough, and props to those people who do that. Luckily, this client we had, it was 3 days a week, and we invoiced them every month for the work. So actually, although it was strictly an accounting contract, it was a bit like a salary.
Yeah.
And that was fine. The flip side meant that they sort of treated you like an employee, and then
you're relying on them.
You were doing a lot of work, and what it did mean as well, though, is actually because that one contract was a large proportion of our income, it was very hard to end that relationship.
Yeah.
Which is, it's a sort of victim of his own success, I suppose. At the moment, I've got my work-life balance kind of sorted, Carl, but make no mistake, in the first couple of years, there was tears and tantrums and working till midnight and all this sort of thing.
Definitely. And it's that you're relying on that one customer, aren't you? So you put their needs above everything else because they are literally keeping you afloat. And where did that come in, mate? Because I had this when I had my first couple of customers. You're doing everything you can to keep them. But then you get to a point where you've got enough customers, you can start setting the right boundaries. So how did you start doing that, mate? And sort of realizing, look, my time is precious. I've only got so many hours in the day. And, I've got all these paying customers now. So I can't perhaps over-service people, if you wish, because that's what you start doing at the start, isn't it? You over-service people to a, I suppose, your own detriment,
Yeah, and I think if you've only got a couple of clients and you've got 5 days a week to do that work, the work will expand to fit the time available.
Nice.
Which is a really bad thing, because
Yeah,
it
of
stops you
course.
taking on more work.
I
So,
like how you phrase that.
Sorry, say again.
No, I like how you phrase that. The work will always expand to take up the time. If you've only got 2 customers, if you've got 40 hours in a week, you'll sort of spend that, on those customers, won't you, I guess? So
Yeah, and then it's easy to think, oh, I couldn't possibly take on any more clients.
yeah.
So we had a bit of epiphany about maybe 2 or 3 years in, so about halfway through. So this would have been, I think, 2019, early 2019. We went to a sort of accountancy accountancy course. That sounds really boring, but it was more about how to run a business rather than how to be an accountant. And they gave me a lot of advice there. And one of the things was to review your client base, to go through all your clients and actually look at the ones which really, if you had the opportunity again, would you take them on or not? And
Nice.
if you wouldn't, then you need to somehow get rid of them in a better way than that.
Again, it's a barbecue, isn't it? Like you said earlier, it's going back to the barbecue. If you won't invite them to the barbecue, I don't want to really have them as a customer.
Yeah. And there was some where we hadn't quoted enough money, and I'm sure
Yeah.
everyone, thinks, hang on a minute, accountants already charge enough. But it was really interesting. We had some clients where, I was charging them a price which I hadn't changed for 2 or 3 years. But actually their business had grown quite a lot and there was a lot more work and so on and so on.
It's renegotiating then, isn't it?
Yeah, and that was actually really interesting. And again, this is the same for every business, I think. You always think that everyone's going to leave you if you change your prices at all. And so in 2019, we increased a lot of our prices, certainly not above the market rate, but they were just ridiculously cheap, because when you set up a new business, Carly, you underquote everything just to win the work. And we lost a couple of clients, but most clients, in fact, one of them said to me, I always thought you were too cheap. So anyway,
and they're the customers you want, though, aren't they? The people who are going to stay with you and respect that, I've grown myself.
And the clients that you leave, that you lose, are inevitably the ones who you probably didn't mind too much.
Yeah.
And this isn't about ripping people off at all. It's about just making sure that you're, a great phrase that I can't take any credit for is that you need to charge your clients enough to provide the service that they want to pay for.
Yeah.
And again, in any industry, if someone wants you to do their accounts, but they only want to pay sixpence for it, actually, you're not going to provide them the service that they want, and then they're just not going to be happy anyway. But since we did all that, Carl, it's been a lot easier now with our pricing. Everyone pays now the same amount, basically, old clients, new clients, and what have you. And it's allowed me to afford to get other people to help me with the work, because when you don't charge enough for the work, if it's not covering your own costs, you certainly can't scale it, pay someone else to come and help you with that.
I like that. That's, to be fair, mate, that's where I am at the moment. So I like that you've sort of brought that up. And a lot of companies face that issue, I think, just going from being one person to saying, right, can I actually scale this, and can I take it above a certain number of customers, essentially, because, you've got a service and you're building a retained customer base. So I wanted to speak about that a little bit, Peter, just in regards to, I know it's an accountant, and of course, you obviously, you need an accountant every single year if you run a business, but like you said, we met because I spoke to you and I needed my accounts doing, but I just started in and I only did, a grand's worth of money, and I couldn't justify, I'm going to pay this guy every single month just to file this end of the year. So I just gave somebody £90 to do it for me, basically. But I'm not sure that I'm going to use him next year. I may indeed give you a call and sort of come with you and pay you on a monthly basis and get everything set up correct. Just simply because you've been there when I've needed the advice, and we've built this, little long-term relationship. So I know you're big on that, and your business is based on that. You want people, you've got this target audience, and you want to bring them in as a retained customer. Look, you pay me on a monthly basis, and then we can develop something over the long term. So it's actually worth me putting in the work to begin with to acquire you as a customer and bring you on board. And look, I can only do 2 a month anyway, as you said earlier, because I don't want to grow at a rapid rate. I don't want to just hit numbers for the sake of it. I want to bring people on who I think are going to be with me for 5-10 years. So how important is that to you for your longevity and the foundations of your business, to have a retained customer base and sort of, be thinking in the long term? Do you think that's led to the success that you've had so far?
Yeah, so there's two things I think that have worked, and that's something we changed in 2019 from an annual fee to a monthly fee. And for a lot of our newer clients, actually the price doesn't change. It's just that it's paid over 12 months. From a kind of just numbers point of view, Carl, that means that your cash flow and my cash flow are both smoother, and that's fine. But from a mental point of view, it makes quite a difference, because instead of having an accountant where, in June my accountant does my tax return, I sign it, and then I speak to him 12 months later, because it's effectively a retainer, what it means is you feel just that, actually this is my accountant, every month, you see that amount going out, it reminds you've got an accountant, and people can pick up the phone to us anytime. We'll always chat with clients. They can book for existing clients, they can book a chat with me directly in my calendar for 10 minutes if they just want to natter about something, or just a quick question here or there, and we don't charge for that. And if there's work coming out of it, there's a separate cost, and we'll advise that. But what I don't want, and I saw this happen in the bigger firms, Carl, clients are afraid to phone their accountant because they get a bill.
Yeah.
But because they didn't phone, actually, because let's say they were worried that someone's going to send them a bill for 100 quid, but because they didn't have the conversation, they've now lost 10 grand because they went ahead with the transaction without asking the question. So yeah, having it as a retainer is certainly not a contract. I think that's an important thing. I don't agree with contracts in most businesses, because I think just do a good job for your client.
Yeah, so you're on a month-to-month rolling contract. Pay me every month. Like you say, it increases your cash flow, and it shows that, look, I'm accountable. This is the service that I offer. If you need me, I'm here. And if you don't like it, you can leave. It's your choice.
Well, yeah, and to give you an example, end of the tax year in April, if we had someone and they were on a retainer from April, and let's say in May or June, their tax return was filed. Now, we would expect that person to continue as a client, and then next year we'd obviously do the tax return again.
Yeah.
But if they said, actually, Pete, I think you're a waste of time, I don't like you, and they walked away at that point, you could say we've done ourselves out of a favour, really, because we've only received a couple of months' worth of what should have been a year's worth of income. But actually, what's the point in forcing a client to stay on to the end, for the full 12 months if actually they're not happy? Luckily, I've never had to put my money where my mouth is on that.
Exactly, mate. I like that, because you put it out
it's
there,
the option.
and people sort of, they appreciate the fact that you are accountable, and like you say, it's a rolling monthly contract, and they're not, as long as they're happy with the service, why would they ever have a problem? You know what I mean?
And I said the same on websites as well, I guess, and other things, your telephone service, all those sorts of things. There's no need for a contract. Just do a good job.
100%. But I like how you've set up, mate. Like you mentioned, I've done the same. Monthly payments. It increases your cash flow, makes it easier for somebody to come on board. They're not paying you a big lump sum every year and then question it in the head because, like you say, you've not spoke to them. And it keeps you accountable. You make sure that you're providing a good service, so they stay with you. No, I like that, mate. You're building a retained customer base, because by all means, could you have just set up and try and gone out there and been like an accountant who tries to take a yearly fee? Because, there is different ways you can set up your business, as you said. So, what made you go from the yearly to the monthly? What were the catalyst in that?
So, it was wanting to. I mean, partly for cash flow for both parties is good, but I think it was just this idea of, well, actually, simplicity. So, if let's say we were acting for a client and we do their annual tax return, we do their quarterly VAT return, we do their monthly payroll, we do their personal tax return, and anyway, do lots of different things that all recur at different points. Well, actually, that over a year it's going to cost you X. So rather than be lumpy, and have a 1 month be quite a large invoice and then hardly anything the next month. Actually, work out that cost and just divide it by 12. And then it just makes things so simple. We know exactly what our income is going to be every month. Clients know exactly what their cost of accountancy is going to be every month.
Yeah.
And if I can give you a little insight into the world of accountancy, and I sort of hesitate slightly, but there we go. If everyone knows that the tax year finishes in April, and then the deadline for submitting the tax return is January. And a lot of clients, certainly when I was working in the big office, a lot of clients would leave it till January to send their information in, which meant that accountants were doing not a lot of work in the summer and then working very hard in the winter. You could not get holiday as an accountant in December or January, because that's when the clients send their tax return information in. And there's absolutely no need for clients to do that, because your tax payment date doesn't change depending on when you get your tax return in. And in fact, if you get it in earlier, you've got more notice of your payment. But what I realized was that if I'm a client, put myself in my client's shoes, if Pete's going to send me a bill once I've sent in my tax return information and once that's completed, but I don't want that bill, so I'll wait until January to send him that information, because then I won't get the bill till January. And I can see why, as a client, that would be beneficial. So by saying, look, everything's paid over 12 months. If you get your tax return into me in May, you already get the benefit of that tax return, and you haven't paid a lot at that point. If you get it to me in January, you're not getting as good a tax. Well, the tax return will be the same, but you're only getting 3 weeks' notice of your tax payment.
You're incentivizing them, aren't you? You're incentivizing them to get it to you quicker. And like you said, you've only paid me a couple of months here, and it's all done. You know what you owe. The service is already done. So you're setting up your business, and over time, it's obviously evolving. And you're sort of thinking about things from your customer's point of view. You're having that empathy. And this is what marketing is about, which is why I think you've sort of done well. You've looked at it from your customer's point of view. When I look at your brand and Blue Penguin, and the reason I wanted to speak to you and I've sort of stayed in touch with you is that it does intrigue me. It is fun. You've sort of hit the mark with it, I guess, in what you are trying to do with the culture and how you sort of portray yourself. So I like that, mate. So you're building a customer base, you've outsourced some of the work, and you're sort of building up these skills, I guess, within branding, within marketing, within customer relationships. So you not only had to focus on the accounting, as you would if you were in a firm, let's say, you've got to focus on the networking, the branding, the customer service. What's that like, mate? Evolving it over years and seeing it sort of, because it wasn't perfect when you first started in, let's say, 2015, 2016, was it 5 years ago? And then it's evolved over time, and you've brought in more customers, you've changed to the monthly payments, and I suppose life's got a little bit easier, mate, has it?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly more predictable. We've got everything set up now where we from month to month, we know the workload we're going to have and that sort of thing, and taking on not a lot of clients at a time helps with that. I think with any business, Carl, there's a difference between doing your job really well and running a business. So Definitely. Being an accountant and running a business are two different things. Being a web 100%. Designer and running a web design business,
two different things.
So it was a steep learning curve, and there was you start to realize that there are lots of things that actually you're not very good at, and you should probably get someone else to do on your behalf. And that's not a failure at all.
It's not a failure. It's actually an asset to know that and to recognize that, and you can do something about it, can't you? You can bring somebody on, like you say, rather than try and do everything and be like sort of in control and all that sort of stuff. So you had a very steep learning curve. You've had to learn all this stuff, branding yourself, putting yourself out there. You've took the risk. It's like, right, I'm not in a job anymore. I haven't only got to do this one thing, a vertical thing. I'm an accountant. I've got to brand myself, put myself out there, go out networking. As you say, accountants, they are introverted, and it is maybe hard to get out there. But the growth within that, mate, what was it like that first couple of years as you've sort of found your feet, and then you finally realised, when was it that you realised I've sort of got something here. This is sustainable, and I might be able to. There might be something, that's a little bit permanent rather than a temporary fixture in my life.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, that's probably just actually before the start of COVID, and it was beginning of 2020, and I was on holiday, if we can all remember what that used to be like.
Yeah.
And I was sort of holiday, weirdly, as a business owner, actually just means it's a time to think about your business without clients phoning you all the time.
Yeah, of course.
And I spend all my time with clients reviewing their business performance, but as they say, cobblers' kids are poorly shod, and accountants are really bad at looking at their own accounts. But I had this time to do it, and I realised actually, this is making reasonable money. It's allowing me to do what I want to do, and when I want to do it, which is great. Because the whole idea of leaving my job was because I couldn't get a holiday at Christmas, and I couldn't just go to the beach for a day if I wanted to do that, and what have you. So I don't think I'm working any less hard, and I don't think there are many business owners who would say they are working less hard now they're running their own business. The difference is you choose when you work.
Yeah.
So if I want to go out for lunch when we're allowed to do that, I can go and do that. Okay, I might have to work a bit in the evening, but that's fine. And you can also make the decision on outsourcing stuff, Carl. I could do all my own admin, or I could get my weekends back. I can make that decision, which is good. So yeah, it's been only probably the last sort of 18 months, 2 years that it's really turned into a sort of what I would describe as a sort of a standalone business that is hopefully going to continue to grow and effectively be an asset when you come to retire, something that you would then sell.
Yeah.
Because I think exit strategy is something that people don't think about. You're so busy running your business day to day.
There's no business there. You're just self-employed accountant, and that's all you are.
You've got to make sure that someone else could come in and do your job.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you don't have a business. You've just got a job for yourself.
No, yeah, I like that. So how have you gone about that? Is it sort of, if somebody were to come in and they were to take Blue Penguin on today, have you developed systems within the business that would allow them to effectively run it with, just a well-oiled machine, isn't it? You can just maintain it rather than...
There's a really good book that I would invite all of your listeners to read or listen to, because I'm sure it's on the Audible thing. Is the E-Myth by Michael Gerber.
E-Myth?
Okay.
The E-Myth.
The E-Myth. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a really, really good book. It's not
why
accountants specifically.
What's he say? Why most small businesses don't work and what to do about it. The E-Myth revisited. I'll have a look at that, mate.
So it's an excellent book, and basically what it's saying is the problem that a lot of small businesses have is that really it's just a person with a job that's created their own job for themselves. There's no system, and there's no way, and the only way they can expand is just by working harder. And what he talks about is putting systems. And I read this when I was on that Epiphany holiday last year, and I read the whole thing, and then I got back and I systemized or tried to systemize as much as possible. And it's never completed, like marketing and like anything else. Nothing's ever
always make
finished,
it more
Carl.
efficient.
You're just trying to improve it. But we have a system. So when a client joins us now, there's a lot of things to be done depending on whether they're VAT registered, whether they've got a payroll, this, that, and the other. And it's very easy to miss those things. So we've now got we've got some accountancy, so some practice management software that has every conceivable thing that we need to do for a new client, and it's tailored. So we have almost like a little questionnaire internally. Is this client, do they have personal tax? Do they have this, that, and the other? And based on the answers to those, it will tailor all the work that we need to do for them.
Yeah.
So it's really, really systemized.
Like
it means that there's less chance of me missing something, but it also means I don't have to do it. And anybody in the team automated. Can do that.
No, yeah, I like that. And I mean, like you say, a lot of people struggle with this, and I think it's a point where a lot of small business owners, they create themselves something, and like you said, to earn any more money or to get any more out of it, they've got to just work harder, work longer hours, and they can never really sell themselves on value. They're just selling themselves on price because they've not got a specialism. They've not set themselves up with a retained customer base. They're just going out there selling all the time. A lot of people get stuck in that trap, mate. So I like the fact that you've systemized your business. You learn that, don't you, in the corporate world, because although it's a little bit of a, oh, I'm trapped in this, and, you know, there's a partner and it's a hierarchy, you have got the systems. They're in place for a reason, because of the work. And has that saved you time? Has it made you more efficient just by having those systems in place?
It's interesting you say that. You'd think that large accountancy firms have these systems, but they don't, in my experience.
Yeah.
Because what you have in a large accountancy firm is basically, the firm that I used to work for has, I think, 12 partners or something like that. And someone made a joke about them once, that actually it's not a firm with 12 partners, it's 12 accountancy firms with the same sign above the door.
Right.
And you'd have the 12 different partners, and they'd have their sort of team of staff, and they'd all be doing it in a different way. And it meant that if you were to go and move from one department to another, as I did a couple of times in the firm, actually you had to learn a new way of doing things.
Right.
And so, for example, the workflow, the job planning would be basically on Excel. In this day and age, it's just on Excel. And now and again, someone would accidentally delete a cell, and the client's accounts would get forgotten. Simple as that. So,
like you say, it's very archaic. I think that's the word you used earlier.
Yeah, we carried on using that here because I didn't know any better, and then I had an epiphany. I was like, well, this is rubbish. So we have proper accountancy practice management software, which knows for every client all of its deadlines, all of the things that needs to be done, and it tells me what to do, when to do it. And in theory, it means we don't ever forget stuff. That costs money. And so I think when you're setting up a business, you try and avoid costs as best you can, but there comes to a point where you have to spend money. And my goodness, Carl, the amount of time it is now saving us with the repetitive jobs. And like with you, I imagine registering a new website for a client is the same as the previous one almost.
Yeah.
That process. So if you have that process streamlined and written down, someone else could do that process for you.
Yeah.
And they'd know when to ask for help if they needed help. But in most cases, they could just carry on doing it, and it wouldn't get forgotten, and it's not Post-it notes around your office. It's a proper system. So again, going back to Michael Gerber's book, he says, have a system for everything.
Yeah.
Because if you can't get someone else to do it, you'll never expand your business except by working stupid hours.
No, yeah, I like that. It's about scaling things, isn't it? Like, go back to the point earlier, a lot of people, they create themselves things, little businesses that they think are businesses, but they're actually not. They're just self-employed web designers. They're going out, they're charging £300, or the accountants are charging money, just to file your books. They're not really creating a long-term relationship. And this is what business is about. If you want to create a company, it's about creating something for the long term. And you touched on it, mate, just scaling the business. And that can't be done with just yourself. And you've talked about outsourcing some of the, processes, I guess. And you've got some of these softwares that you're working on that allow you to keep yourself in check. So what are you currently outsourcing at the moment, mate, as an accountant? What do you outsource to others? Is there anybody that you work with in particular, like somebody in marketing or somebody, who does your website? So what do you outsource?
So we don't outsource a lot in terms of the day-to-day function. So for example, the marketing, like I do it, but I deliberately do it because it's my personality, I guess, coming through. I think that's a hard thing to outsource. Carl, you've seen the back end of my website, and I'm sure you've laughed a lot. There is a point where that will need to be outsourced as I have less time to do it. We do outsource, some of the printing, some of the graphics, some of the design stuff, and I think when you as you grow and you get less and less time and your time becomes more valuable, you will start outsourcing more. I don't think it's a shame or any failure on anybody to outsource stuff. Something that has been really interesting in the marketing, Carl, is getting a copywriter. And a lot of people comment on my website, and please do go and have a look at it. And they say that it was the website that made me decide which accountant I was going to approach, because I'm sure like with any business profession, you'd be looking at a few different people. And most accountancy websites are really boring. And I started to write my own website, and I thought, no, I'll do it all fun and different. And actually I ended up writing the same rubbish that other firms have. So I got this guy a guy called Richard Hussey, who lives local to me. And he met with me and we had a whole talk about everything. Yeah, and the he came up with all the text, which sounds like it's the sort of thing I'd say, but it's so hard when you write it yourself. So that was really good money well spent. And when I do any mail shop publications, or if I'm doing a big letter to all clients for something, I'll get him to write it with me.
Nice.
And I think copywriting is something that's overlooked when everyone's on about how many hits can you get and your ads and your graphics and all this sort of thing. Actually, the message can get lost. So that was quite a useful outsource, as it were.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, with copywriting, once you start studying it, I mean, I've written like 200 blogs on LinkedIn, and I've studied these books and all that. It is a sweet science, mate. And like you say, I got to a point where I'd studied it enough to realise that, you know, I didn't know anything, essentially. You know, the Dunning-Kruger effect. You feel like you know everything at start, and then you start and you're like, oh my God. There's a lot to it, isn't there? Getting the words right, getting somebody to pick up the phone because of the words that they've sort of read on your website. So is that the only thing that you can think that you've really outsourced? I know you've got an administrative person in the, you know, company 2 days a week. So that was the first thing. What is she responsible for, mate?
So all of our bookkeeping and all of our payroll services that we offer for clients, she deals with all of that on a sort of week to week basis, which is great. Outsourcing is a really interesting word in the accountancy world at the moment, Carl, because there's a difference here. So the lady that we have, although she works from home at the moment, obviously before COVID, you know, we worked physically together, so it was sort of effectively an employee. It's just that she also ran this other business. But this idea of outsourcing to India or the Philippines or what have you, that's becoming quite popular in accountancy at the moment.
Right.
And that's where you effectively send the client's records
overseas
to someone abroad. They have someone who's a lot cheaper over there to do it all and send it back. Now, you could debate all day whether that's right or wrong. I don't agree with it myself. I wouldn't be comfortable with it, but that's only my decision.
Yeah.
It is certainly becoming more popular. I think the important thing is for clients to understand who is doing the work. You know, and I think if you aren't telling your clients that their data is going overseas to be processed, then that would be a concern for me.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? I suppose sending other people's work to somebody that you don't know, don't necessarily know the, you know. I can see that being a problem.
It is an interesting one. I mean, I like the idea, and I think it's really important to me. If I'm dealing with a company, I want to know who's doing the work, and I want to be able to contact them if I have a question.
Again, that's how you sell your service, though, mate, isn't it? Like, you are the guy, I'm doing this work.
Yeah,
it's a personal service. Delving into that, mate, how do you keep it a personal service then at this level? Now you are expanding and you've got so many customers. How do you keep that personal service? You've mentioned only bringing 2 people on at once, but is the other things? Do you sort of revisit customers? Do you touch base on a monthly basis? Do you reach out, or do you wait until they reach out to you?
So depends on the service we offer. Where we've got clients that we're doing monthly services for, payroll, bookkeeping, and or VAT and things, we will inevitably end up talking to them every month or so. Yeah. Where we've got clients that we perhaps only do a tax return for, within our management system that we have, it will flag up to me at various dates, depending on the last contact we had. Nice. That perhaps it might be nice just to drop Carl a message and just see how life's going on, and is there anything important or whatever, and to try and reiterate that idea of, look, it's not just a tax return. And most often people say, no, everything's fine, thanks. Obviously a bit different in the last year.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that is important. So it makes people feel like it's not like a tax return factory or what have you. Yeah, but in terms of personal service, and going back to the reason I don't have my name above the door, I don't think that service needs to come from me, but I think it needs to come from a person. Yeah. So, for example, my colleague who is looking after a lot of tax returns, he is not a junior who's looking to promote and then go to another firm and go on. I'm expecting he'll be here for the long term, because he's effectively sharing. He's almost like running his own business within my business.
Yeah.
So whenever we have a new client, we send them a team sheet, which is a photo and a little bio and contact details for all 3 of us, so they know who the people are. And so my colleague will be there main point of contact for tax returns, for example.
Yeah.
And so even if I'm not around, because I've got to sleep and I've got to have holidays, they know they can speak to him. But it'll be the same person every year.
Yeah.
Often when I speak to people who are coming over from other accountants, and I'll say, "Oh, who is your contact there?" Because I need to speak to them. They say, "Well, I don't know who it is. It changes every year. Last year it was this person, but I don't know who it is now." So I think the service doesn't have to come from me, but it has to come from the same person every year to have a relationship with.
Definitely.
I think you're right, though. As you grow, it would be impossible for me to have a monthly catch up with every client. I literally just wouldn't have time in the day. But as long as we have a named person.
But again, I like it because it's about developing the systems. You're putting the systems in place. This accountancy, software is letting you know, look, I need to get in touch with so-and-so. Just send him an email. Make sure that he knows that I still exist. And they get in touch with you, mate, when they've got a problem, don't they? Because a lot of... Personally, I reached out to people too much. But then if you withdraw, you realise, look, as long as they pay me, they're happy. Because if they weren't happy, they'd bring it up.
Different people, I think, want different levels of contact. I have clients that I literally don't speak to in 12 months. I'll drop the messages, never hear anything from them, but that's just because, they're happy with that. It's not, some people don't want that contact, whereas some people like to let you know every time they made a sale or whatever. But it's just trying to work out what people like and what works for them.
Yeah, no, of course, I like that. So you've scaled the business, mate. You've you're at a place now where what are you happy, or what are the long-term plans for Blue Penguin? Where you're looking to take things long-term?
So no particular targets. We've got no sort of financial goals to aim for just because people make you have targets and things. We're very happy ticking over just as we are. I get to work, probably work 4 days a week at the moment, which is about right for me because I've got dogs and other things I want to be doing and going out for walks and what have you. So to be honest, Carl, I mean, would we grow a lot? We certainly don't advertise anymore. I probably won't go back to networking events when we're allowed to. We get referrals and people just see us online, and that's great. But it'll be real slow growth.
Just maintaining the business you've got.
Growth for the sake of growth is not a great thing. My second book recommendation to everybody is going to be Company of One by a guy called Paul Jarvis.
Right.
And he's written a fantastic book. It says in here, why staying small is the next big thing for business. And he's not saying you should be just yourself and just working God knows, but he's talking about how actually there's a lot of profitable companies out there that just are very small but concentrate just on what they do well. And I guess that goes back to me saying, we're not here for people who just want the absolute lowest price they can find. We're not here for people who want to change accountant every year. We're also not here for perhaps people in the construction industry, for example. We don't specialize in that. So our niche is quite a specific one in terms of people who provide services rather than products. So we wouldn't have retailers, anything like that. And what it means is we can get better and better at a smaller and smaller field. And that then becomes
build that specialism.
And that would be the same in any business. I imagine, there are website companies that specialize in, we only make websites for retailers or something.
Definitely.
They could take on a job making my website, but it would probably not be very profitable for them because they'd have to learn a different specialism. So
100%. You've built a target audience.
No plans.
I just focus on that, mate. I guess you built this target audience. Sorry for cutting you off. What I was going to say is, has that built over time, mate? Have you found that over time? Has that come over the years that, right, I've got these first couple of customers and then, I built up on that. And obviously over the last 5 years, these are the main people that I service. Right, let me just focus on that. I want to be selective. You've made a switch here from I'm growing a business to I've got to maintain a business. So, that's a very interesting dynamic, I think, that a lot of people, they fail to make because they've not built up a customer base. They're always outselling themselves. So you've got a sort of unique situation here in the fact that you built something that can be maintained.
I think accountants are quite lucky, Carl, because what we provide is a recurring service.
Yeah.
Every year you need a tax return, whereas solicitors, for example, you only buy a house every 10 years, so they've always got to go out and find new clients. So actually, for an accountant, I might as well put most of my effort into looking after the clients I have, because I know that they are going to need a tax return next year. So let's make sure we're the people that they want to be doing that return. So we're quite lucky as an industry. But I suppose websites. Someone's going to need a website next week, and I suppose plumbers. Those you're going to need your boiler service every year. And so anything that's got a recurring income really wants to focus on the clients that they have, and not worry about growing it at the expense of their existing client base.
Yeah, 100%. And even like you say, even real estate, you might buy an house every 10 years, but still, if you can maintain contact with somebody for 10 years, you might retain that customer, if you're thinking that long term. And I know a lot I've listened to podcasts where people talk about, look, if once somebody's bought an house off me after 7 years, I'm still in contact with him because I want them to buy the next house with me. So, like you said, you've sort of built up a foundation here. It is long term. You've switched to customer service mode. But when people do approach you, mate, they're approaching you to come and work with you. Why? Because you're an expert. You've got engaging posts on social media, and you put yourself out there, and you know what you're talking about. You're answering questions all the time on the Facebook forums and that sort of stuff. I see you doing that, so that's always good to see. But of course, if people do want to get in touch with you, mate, have you got a couple of insights into somebody? They're just getting started now. They're worried. Oh, I've made a couple of £100. I'm making a couple of £100 a week. What should I do? Should I go limited company? Should I go self-employed? You've got all these fears in your head about taxes and all this when you first start making money. But in actuality, it's quite simple, isn't it, mate? So have you got any, a couple of basics just to alleviate some of those responsibilities for somebody out there who may be getting started in business and all this is just, it's just confusing them?
Yeah, for sure. You'll find if you spend any time on Facebook or LinkedIn, there's always people asking the question to other Facebook groups of, I'm just starting out on a business X, Y, and Z. And I would say if anyone's going to build their business on the basis of a Facebook group's opinion, this isn't to say that people on Facebook don't know what they're talking about, but they can only answer from their point of view. And I think whenever you're starting a business, the very first thing you should do is make contact with a few accountants. Find one you like. As we said before, I'm not for everybody, and the next accountant down the road isn't for everybody. Find one that you get on with. Have a chat with them about your plans, even before you get started. It's not going to cost you anything. It might cost a very small amount just to have an initial conversation with them, because there's nothing worse than sitting down a year later after you've been running your business for a year, your accountant saying, oh, look, if only you'd have done X, Y, and Z, then your tax bill would be half. We haven't got time machines. So, find one you like, find one that you're happy with how they charge as well. I don't agree with this idea of, we charge X per hour and we'll just let you know at the end of the year how many hours we spent. Well, hang on a minute. I don't know what it's going to cost me.
Yeah.
So I think fixed pricing is important. It'd be no good you running a website for someone and just saying, I'll just tell you after I've done it. Well, that's
no, definitely
good.
not.
There's the big question everyone says is, should I register as a sole trader or should I be a limited company? And that question, okay, it is like saying, should I buy an Apple iPhone or a Samsung Galaxy? Okay.
Yeah.
There is no one answer. It will depend on your personal circumstances and what business you've got and so on. All that people are going to tell you online is what was right for them, and the accountant is the person that you need to ask, and they will need to understand a lot more about your business than, I'm so-and-so from Nottingham, I'm going to sell shoes. Should I be a limited company?
Hell yeah.
But in terms of registering your business, whether it is a company or as a sole trader, you want to register that as soon as you can. Okay. There's lots of different taxes that you're going to end up paying, sadly. They've all got different registration deadlines, but as soon as you know you're going to be running a business, let's tell HMRC. As soon as you know you're going to employ someone, just tell HMRC straight away, and you get all that done. There used to be penalties for late returns were based on the amount of tax you had to pay. So if you didn't have to pay any tax, they wouldn't charge a penalty. That's gone now. So if you should have registered for a particular tax and you didn't, but you didn't actually have to pay that tax, you'll still get hundreds of pounds of penalties just for not submitting the return. So that's really, really important. You can register a business yourself. You don't need an accountant. What I would say to people, Carl, is you can also buy a house without a solicitor.
Yeah.
There's no legal requirement for you to have one, but I wouldn't buy a house.
There's a lot of responsibilities, isn't there, when you register a limited company? Because I've registered one before. I just had to defer it and all this and just get rid of it, make it, you get rid of all responsibilities. Basically, I didn't know what I was doing. Or young.
There's a lot, and at the moment you might say, "Oh, my business is only turning over £1,000. So actually, does it matter if I get it wrong?" Well, no, it doesn't probably today. What's the worst that can happen? But if you fast forward 10 years and you've got a business that's turning over £150,000, well, if there's something fundamentally wrong with that business, then the issues are going to multiply up. So,
yeah.
I think it's really important to speak to someone. If if in the end of the day you decide to do it yourself, at least having that conversation will give you an idea of not messing it up too much, Carl. But I think definitely speak to someone who is qualified and has experience in setting up businesses, because they're going to know straight away what is going to be the right thing for you. And I suppose a good tip that, again, from Michael Gerber is, he said, look, plan for the business you want, not the business you have. So you might be running a business, like I say, that's turning over £1,000 now, in which case a limited company is not right for you. But if you're hoping that business will turn over £250,000 in a few years, you need to set up that as a limited company now to
definitely
to sort that for the future. In terms of how you run your business day to day, for example, if you've got one sale a month, a spreadsheet will do the job. But unless you're planning on having one sale a month forever, there's a point at which you're going to need proper accounting software. So just do that from day one. Again, I'm not going to tell you which ones you should or shouldn't buy, but something like Xero, which is quite a popular accounting software. I think the base price on that is something like £10 a month. So it's really not a lot, and I think that's really useful. If you're thinking about accounting software as well, a lot of accountants will charge you less for your annual accounts if your records are kept on proper accounting software than if you turn up with a carrier bag of your records.
So it may be worth investing in.
That could be a good one. So just take your business seriously and act as if it is already what you've planned it to be. Don't spend money for no reason, but don't go cutting corners all the time, because you'll never grow. I think if you're not outsourcing anything, but you're working really, really hard yourself, you are just going to struggle to expand. But it does take a bit of a leap of faith, and it does need an investment in the meantime. I'd love to give advice to everybody that says, when you set up a new business, make sure you've got a load of savings put aside so you can really invest in that business. That isn't a luxury that a lot of people have at the minute. So I want to be careful to suggest that people could do that. But certainly as soon as you are able, start investing in systems in your business that will allow you to grow easily when you do get those clients.
No, I like that. You can't really give somebody generic advice, because what's going to work for one person is not going to work for another person, whether that's in the accounting or whether that's in getting into business. Because I know when I had a load of money in my account and I first started a company, I failed. But then when I started with nothing, I was sort of back up against the wall and I made something of it. So again, the money can be a detriment, mate, if you've got the savings in the bank. So I like that. Every company is different. Everybody is different. We've all got us different motivators. And in regards to everybody being different, mate, you mentioned that you don't service everybody. So if there's people out there and they may be thinking, right, this Peter knows what he's on about, who are the type of people that you may want to invite into your barbecue, mate? Who are your services? Who are your customer base?
So that's a really great question. And I think every accountant should be able to answer this question, and not just say, oh, we'll look after anybody. So we're looking for UK-based individuals running their own business. So we're not looking for sort of, massive organizations with loads of directors and shareholders and things. We want family-run businesses or individuals running their businesses. They would generally be selling a service rather than a product. So, freelancers, web designers, financial advisors, surgeons, anyone selling their expertise rather than a physical product. And the turnover for our ideal client would be something between £50,000 and £500,000. Below that level, I have to be honest, it's hard for an accountant to add a decent amount of value if the business might only be turning over £10,000. Once you get the other side of £500,000, you need a lot more support and lots of different specialisms than a firm of 3 people can probably provide you with. So, if a client comes to me and says, we turn over £30 million a year, would you like me to do your accounts? Here's a massive fee. Well, that's great, but you're going to have so many requirements that we don't have that. So I think it's important to know who you look after and also who you don't. And I think there's no shame in saying
Definitely.
that particular client isn't for us. Let's focus on what we do best and just serving those clients.
Yeah, and being selective with your customers. Again, going back to the conversation we had a little bit earlier. Well, in this conversation, it's about, this is your target audience, mate. And if people come to you and they're not suited for you and they earn over £500,000, it's like, well, wait a minute, I can't service you because if you take them on, too much stress for you, too much to do, and inevitably your ship's going to sink, isn't it? You've got this customer base already to service. So if people are out there, the surgeons, the web designers, service-based companies, if you're selling your expertise, obviously blue-penguin.co.uk is the website. Peter will gladly give you advice. Peter gave me some great advice when I first started, alleviated all my anxieties when I first got into business. And you sit back of your head, you leave it, you've been in business 3 to 4 months, maybe 5 months, you're thinking, oh, what should I do about this? And I've got to register, and it's all online portals, and you're thinking, oh my God, Christ. But all you've got to do is sign a letter that says Peter is going to be your accountant, and you allow him to be responsible to send in your accounts. He'll give you all the advice you need. Your bookkeeping, just keep track of what comes into your bank, put it on a spreadsheet, and keep track of what you buy for your business. You send it to Peter at the end of the year, and he'll file your taxes. And how much do you charge, mate?
So for a sole trader with a relatively small business, it will be £30 a month plus VAT for the tax return. For larger businesses that have accounts and payroll and bookkeeping, we do all of that based on level of turnover and the number of transactions. So what it means is we can tell someone in advance, this is the cost based on the size of your business now, rather than, oh, we'll do it and we'll let you know afterwards. But for small startup businesses, £30 a month plus VAT spread over 12 months.
Perfect. Right, so if you are out there, you're in business, you need an accountant, as I say, Peter gave me some great advice. It's blue-penguin.co.uk. Well, thanks a lot for your time today, mate. We've had a good chat there. I'd like to thank anybody and everybody who has sort of gave us a listen. Again, Pit Village Podcast. We are always open to interviewing business owners like yourself, like Peter, people with stories about mental health, bereavement, finding your feet within your 20s. And yeah, thanks a lot for tuning in. pitvillagepodcast.co.uk.